woman while he rolled a fresh-made arrow shaft between his teeth, taking the sap out of it. These were horses a stray band of Comanche raiders had been picking up in the Texas settlements, Cloud reasoned. Now the wily thieves were working their way north to the safety of those trackless stretches of open grass on the staked plains, where they would lose themselves like a whirlwind that suddenly lifts and disappears into air in a solitude so vast that white men drew back in dread. Counting in fives with tiny moves of his big hand, Cloud estimated that there were 80 or 90 horses. Many a farmer and cowman had been left afoot to walk and curse. More than likely, a few had lost their scalps as well as their horses. To the Comanche warrior, stealing down from his stronghold on the high plains, warfare was a game to be played and enjoyed, an end in itself. To steal a Tejano's horses brought material wealth and a considerable measure of honor. To count coup on the hated Tejano and bring back his scalp greatly increased the honor and raised the warrior's status in the eyes of the tribe. Cloud could still see only the one buck, and he wondered where the rest were. He counted 6 women, young squaws who remained physically able to make the long forays with their men, to do the menial chores and hold the horses and glory in the fighting manhood of their warriors. That there were 6 women didn't mean there were only 6 men, however. Many of the bucks never brought women on these trips. They didn't have to. For a Comanche warrior, fortunate enough to have a woman with him, thought little of lending her to a needful friend. The other men must be off somewhere trying to gather up more horses, Cloud reasoned. They must feel sure of themselves, leaving only one man with these squaws to watch the ones they already had. Either they had whipped back their pursuit, or they considered it too far behind to worry about. High time to heist my tail and get out of here, he thought. Only which way had I ought to run? Wrong guess and I'll butt heads with Lord knows how many Comanches. He was no stranger to Indian warfare. He'd had his scraps, and a deep scar on one shoulder to show for it, but he saw no sense in riding headlong into a one-sided battle where overwhelming weight of numbers was sure to grind him down. There was a time to fight, and a time to ride away. Without question, this was a time to ride. He heard the heavy roar of a rifle from somewhere over the next hill, and he jerked involuntarily. The blast was followed by the staccato rattle of smaller guns. The horses lifted their heads, their ears pricking up in the direction of the gunfire. The buck and the squaws turned too, listening. The buck shook his head confidently to the young woman beside him, telling her, Cloud judged, that it wouldn't take long. Cloud eased back a foot until he could no longer see the horses, and until he hoped the Indians could not see him. At least now he knew where the rest of the band was. Good chance to get away. But he was held by the sound of battle. Somebody across yonder was putting up a good fight. The trouble with being a reasonable man was that reason all the time wanted to argue with a man's emotions. Reason told Cloud to mount up and spur out of there while he could. But emotion made him wonder and worry about whoever the Comanches had bottled up. How much chance did those people have? Cloud skirted through the post oak, circled the horse herd, and made his way up the off side of a hill, the rifle across his lap. Staying within brush cover, he climbed until he could look out across a clearing at the farmhouse below. It was pretty much the usual Texas frontier farmer's log cabin. Actually, it was almost 2 cabins. Its 2 rooms built under one roof, but separated by a narrow, open dog run. Each room was buttressed by a heavy rock chimney. Man with a family, Cloud figured, and most of them shooting. Defending fire racketed from 3 places, from each section of the cabin and from a heavy post-oak corral. The settler must have had a little warning, time enough to get his horses into the corral and shut the gate. To get them, the Indians were first going to have to kill him. Even then they would be under close fire from the cabin. Heavy smoke rose from the man's position in the